When a worker signs a factory employment contract, those terms are immediately subservient to the statutory framework of Chapter 8 of the Factories Act 1948. Section 78 of the Act establishes this specific chapter as the absolute legal floor for calculating annual leave with wages. It contains an aggressive override mechanism. If an employer tries to issue an award or draft an agreement that provides less favorable leave conditions than the Act, Chapter 8 automatically voids those terms and replaces them with its own statutory minimums. Conversely, if a factory contract offers a longer period of paid leave, the worker is legally entitled to keep that superior quantum of time. However, the administrative mechanics of how that leave is applied and paid are still rigidly governed by Sections 79 through 82 of the Act. There is only one jurisdictional exception. Workers in government-administered railway factories are completely exempt from Chapter 8, provided they operate under leave rules explicitly approved by the central government. Section 78 removes the power of employers to treat time off as a negotiable perk, making rest a guaranteed, legally protected asset. Accessing this asset requires a worker to clear the absolute gateway metric defined in Section 79. They must complete exactly 240 days of work in a factory during a calendar year to become entitled to annual leave for the subsequent year. Reaching that 240-day mark includes specific non-working days. First, any days where a worker is subjected to an authorized layoff by agreement or contract count directly toward the threshold. Second, for female workers, up to 12 weeks of maternity leave are officially deemed as days worked for the purpose of this calculation. Third, the actual leave days a worker earned in the prior year and took in the current year are also added to the 240-day count. But the statute creates a deliberate distinction here. While layoffs, maternity leave, and prior vacations help a worker reach the 240-day minimum to qualify for next year's leave, the worker does not actively accrue new leave capital on those specific days of absence. Adults accrue one paid leave day for every 20 days worked. Child workers accrue faster, 1 day for every 15 days worked. If this calculation produces a fraction of half a day or more, it rounds up to a full day. Lesser fractions are discarded. The math adjusts for mid-year hires as well. If a worker starts their job after January 1st, they only need to work 2/3 of the total remaining days in that calendar year to qualify for the standard accrual rates. This threshold algorithm ensures that vulnerable workers, such as pregnant women or staff subjected to operational layoffs, do not lose their legal right to rest because of absences over which they have no control. Earning the time is a mathematical certainty, but taking the leave requires navigating a rigid framework designed to maintain continuous factory production. Workers must submit their leave application in writing at least 15 days in advance, or 30 days if they are employed in a public utility service. Additionally, the time off can be taken in no more than 3 separate installments per year. If a worker doesn't use their full allotment, the surplus rolls over. Adults can carry forward a maximum of 30 days into the succeeding year, while children can carry forward up to 40 days. Section 79, subsection 7 creates an immediate override for sickness. If the leave is required to cover an illness, the 15-day advance notice requirement is entirely waived. The Works Committee scheme is a formalized leave schedule lodged with the chief inspector. If a worker's application meets notice rules, management cannot refuse it unless it aligns with this scheme. Illegal rejections allow workers to carry forward refused leave indefinitely, bypassing standard caps. This creates a forced compromise. Factories get a legal tool to prevent mass absenteeism, but management is stripped of the power to arbitrarily deny statutory rest. The complexity of the math shifts drastically when the worker-factory relationship is severed before the leave is utilized. Under Sections 79.3 and 79.11, unavailed leave is never forfeited. At the moment of termination, those days instantly convert into guaranteed, monetized capital. This timeline visualizes termination countdowns. If discharged or dismissed, the factory pays monetized leave before the second working day ends. If quitting, payout occurs by the next payday. For superannuation or death, payouts must be completed within 2 months. Crucially, Section 79.12 strictly isolates this capital. Employers are barred from using a worker's unavailed leave to offset or compute any mandatory notice period prior to a dismissal. By hardwiring these countdowns into the statute, the Act prevents administrative delays from starving out displaced workers or grieving families. With the timelines locked in, Section 80 regulates the exact monetary value of those payouts. Leave wages equal the daily average of total full-time earnings for actual days worked last month. Overtime and bonuses are excluded. However, dearness allowance and the cash equivalent of food grain concessions must be factored into the equation. Converting physical food grain subsidies into a standardized cash metric introduces the most complex variable in the calculation, the standard family. This visualization maps out how the state measures household consumption. A standard family caps out at a maximum of 3 adult consumption units. A male over 14 equals 1 unit. A female equals 0.8 units, and a child under 14 equals 0.6 units. Once that specific daily rate is calculated, Section 81 requires factories to pay it in advance. If an adult's leave is approved for 4 days, or 5 for a child, the factory must issue the wage payment before the time off begins. Section 80 blocks factories from shrinking leave payouts. By forcing the inclusion of non-cash survival benefits, like subsidized food for dependents, the Act ensures the worker's true daily compensation is matched in hard currency. Maintaining this exact precision across thousands of factory floors requires heavy compliance enforcement mechanisms at the macro level. Under Section 82, if an employer fails to pay any sum calculated under this chapter, that debt is legally classified as delayed wages, immediately triggering the aggressive recovery powers of the Payment of Wages Act 1936. To prevent systemic wage theft, Section 83 empowers state governments to force factory managers to maintain exhaustive leave registers, keeping the paper trail accessible for state inspectors at all times. The state government does wield the ultimate authority under Section 84 to exempt a factory from Chapter 8, but that exemption is locked behind a single, unbending condition. The state must be legally satisfied that the factory's own internal leave rules provide a totality of benefits equal to or more favorable than the statutory requirements. Chapter 8 functions as a legally supreme calculating machine. It quantifies the physical toll of industrial labor, and it protects the rights of vulnerable workers, ensuring that every mandated day of rest is compensated down to the decimal.